Whether if it eroticizes violence or makes lovemaking akin to murder, by debuting at number 3 at OCC's UK charts, 1993's Rid of Me and its mainstream success is a phenomenon unlikely to be replicated in popular music. A combination of blues, punk, and math rock so repulsive yet so irresistible by uniting eros and thanatos to the point one cannot say when one of those drives starts and the other ends. Some have interpreted songs such as the album's title track, Rub It Till It Bleeds, and 50 Feet Queenie as feminist reinterpretations of masculine rock and roll tropes, akin to Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville, or even as autobiographical. On the first interpretation, as Polly Jean herself stated, I don't even think of myself as being female half the time. When I'm writing songs, I never write with gender in mind. I write about people's relationships to each other. I'm fascinated with things that might be considered repulsive or embarrassing. I like feeling unsettled, unsure, and on the latter, I'd have to be 40 and very worn out to have lived through everything I write about. One song amidst Rid of Me's tales of lust and vitriol serves in part as repentance and in part as absolution for all crimes of passion sung along its 48 minutes, Legs. The song's premise is simple. The narrator cuts her lover's legs off. Whether it serves as retaliation for infidelity or any other indiscretion is not made known, but what is made abundantly clear are the intense opposite emotions at the heat of that moment, displayed by PJ in her band's performance. In one moment, it's just her pristine guitar, minimal percussion, and the front woman's deliberately frail vocal delivery, half singing, half crying, and barely being able to maintain pitch. In the other, the trio kicks into a grungy assault, featuring a busy drum groove, an overdriven riff, and far more self-assured vocals. 1 minute, PJ wept with absolute sincerity, "You were going to be my life." The other, she mockingly remembers the time she sung her lover "Oh Happy Day." The cycle of regret and irony starts its second round with a violin, played by Polly Jean herself, augmenting the melodrama and the chaos, leading to two final remarks. "I might as well be dead, but I could kill you instead." Suicide, homicide, or its double, this theater of desiring and loathing is incapable of having a happy end. It should be to no one's surprise that, across the pond, PJ Harvey's tales of attraction and repulsion found fans in US's patron saints of the grotesque, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. In fact, if you think Rid of Me sounds similar to Nirvana's In Utero, it's most likely due to the production and sound engineering of the late great Steve Albini. In his unique way of positioning microphones in albums such as the aforementioned ones, as well as Pixies' Suffer Rosa, The Breeder's Pod, and the first 4 of the Jesus Lizard LPs, he was able to craft studio recordings as raw and unnervingly intimate as these men's live performances. And in an album that lays all its ugliness bare with such honesty as Rid of Me, Albini was the right man for the job. Much like its predecessor, 1995's To Bring You My Love is all about the clash and reconciliation of opposites. But instead of being about the relationship between Eros and Thanatos, in her third album, PJ marries the sacred and the profane, combining the blues, punk, and even some notes of industrial with biblical imagery to a staggering result. Although she did not grow up religious, like many of the finest artists, she saw the immense power contained within Christian symbolism, stating, "I look towards religion as possibly one means to finding an answer, to making sense why we're here. That's what drives the creative force, to make sense of one's life. A very natural place to look is in that divine area. because it's so strong and has been here long before us. The album's opening track serves as its manifest. Instead of making love an act of mutually assured destruction like she did in her previous full length, To Bring You My Love is about martyrdom and surrender. You hear in her plea for Jesus to bring back her estranged daughter, now turned into a blue-eyed whore, back to her in Down by the Water. But all this pleading and all this sacrifice doesn't necessarily make her a pious, God-serving woman. In track 1, she compares the interminable wait for her soulmate's arrival to being born in the desert, the same place Jesus had to cross for 40 days and 40 nights of satanic temptations. As sung in a howling wolf and Captain Beefheart inspired growl, she has climbed over mountains, traveled the sea, cast out of heaven, cast down on her knees. What she might be incapable of, I'm afraid, is resisting temptation, as she has declared lain with the devil, cursed God above, forsaken heaven, to bring you my love. Much like with Kurt and Courtney's admiration of her previous 2 albums, it's no wonder that in its sacred profanities, with To Bring You My Love, Polly Jean gained a fan in Nick Cave, who later enlisted her for the murder ballad Henry Lee. Its music video is a real-time document of the artist falling in love. As romantic as it all may seem, that power couple was most likely never meant to endure, as Cave himself theorized in an edition of the Red Hand Files. Deep down I suspected that drugs might have been a problem between us, but there were other things too. I still had a certain amount of work to do on my understanding of the concept of monogamy, and Polly had her own issues, I suspect, but I think at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that we were both fiercely creative people, each too self-absorbed to ever be able to inhabit the same space in any truly meaningful way. We were like 2 lost matching suitcases on a carousel going nowhere. I'm not one to disregard an author's intent. When analyzing any song by any artist or band, I may argue it achieved what intended poorly, well, or maybe not well enough, but never will I dismiss its vision. With that being said, I simply don't get why PJ Harvey once said that Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea is not her New York album. Just look at the album cover and it will inform everything about the music package within. Through some of her finest songwriting to date, therein lies all the amazement and estrangement the Boardport-born artist experienced in the 9 months she lived in the Big Apple, initially for the shooting of Hal Hartley's The Book of Life.
He can't just take things into his own hands and call off the apocalypse. We can't afford not to go all the way on this thing.
But he is going all the way. Like at the beginning.
There's the fear surrounding the as American as apple pie omnipresence of firearms in the album's opener, Big Exit, and a confrontation with urban inequality and enemy in the harsh hustle and the hustler's whore. But at the same time, there's a romantic story tinged in the city's chaotic vibrancy as she sings, "When we walk through Little Italy, I saw my reflection come right off of your face in good fortune." She lovingly pries into her lover's mind in This Mess We're In, letting Tom York sing the majority of its lyrics. If the rumor is true, I suspect its sensual duet dynamics was PJ's way of compensating for being too busy to lend her voice to Deftones' MX, being replaced by Abe Cunningham's then wife, Annalyn. Either way, I truly believe Stories is PJ Harvey's first concept album, even if she won't admit it. and no concept album can go without a great closing track. The borderline transcendental Horses in My Dreams would have been a perfect closer. In fact, I almost picked it for this edition of 5 songs, but I think I've said enough about equine symbolism in the Portishead edition of my series. We'll focus on the de facto coda of stories, We Float. The song starts out in a rather minimal and distant way. Just a bass line played in the lower octaves of a piano and an electronic dance beat. Later, some desolate reverb piano chords enter the scene. This sets the stage for PJ's reflections on her time in NYC. We wanted to find love, we wanted to find success, until nothing was enough, until my middle name was Access. Her dream of making the city that never sleeps her place called home has come to naught, as she was already a very successful artist before the release of Stories and became even more successful after it. It's less about any career-related struggles, but rather interpersonal ones. The girl who had a model smile and the boy who shoplifted as a child, in their bottomless hedonism, have drifted apart, broken and bruised from dealing with such an inherently competitive habitat. But as the chorus arrives, it's clear that there's a crack letting some light shine through. Before fully basking in that light, there is still some darkness that needs to be dealt as Polly Jean sings. So we will die of shock, die without a trial, die on a Good Friday while holding each other tight. Besides taxes, death is the only true certainty we have in life. There may not need be so much to be weary about. So isn't it better to take life as it comes? As the full band comes back for the extended chorus, we're allowed to dwell in that acceptance before the LP or CD runs out, a feeling so comforting that it's hard to imagine it's being conceded by the same woman that once wrote Rub It Till It Bleeds. And that was the point, at least one of the points, of Stories. I wanted everything to sound as beautiful as possible. Having experimented with some dreadful sounds on Is This Desire and To Bring You My Love, where I was really looking for dark, unsettling, nauseous-making sounds, Stories from the City was the reaction. I thought, no, I want absolute beauty. I want this album to sing and fly and to be full of reverb and lush layers of melody. I want it to be my beautiful, sumptuous, lovely piece of work. White Chalk is quite the detour in PJ Harvey's discography, her equivalent to Kid A and simultaneously its inverse. While Radiohead, for their turn of the millennium opus, sidelined the electric guitar for synthesizers, drum machines and samplers, PJ opted for an upright piano to be her muse. In other words, the Oxford band had an ear to the so-called future, while Harvey had hers to the perceived past. On this shift she stated, "The great thing about learning a new instrument from scratch is that it liberates your imagination." In her 7th LP, she took full advantage of her naivete with the keys to create a sound world completely distinct from her previous works. For such a sound world, she also had to alter her songwriting, now dealing less with carnal and earthly matters, to tap into the borderline phantasmagoric. Her chest voice gives way to a higher-pitched mixed one, perfectly embodying this ghostliness. And there's a very special ghost inside the machinations of When Under Ether. One may interpret its lyrics as being in reference to childbirth or abortion. The second verse in particular can corroborate quite strongly to that interpretation. Once asked about its meaning, PJ replied, "That's obviously what you hear, but for me it's not actually tied to anything specific, like an abortion. These aren't just words, they're songs, they inhabit themselves really." If you want to build an interpretation of When Under Ether that better embodies the idea of songs inhabiting themselves, look no further than where she took its title from, the third part of East Coker, one of T.S. Eliot's four quartets.
Oh, dark, dark, dark. They all go into the dark. The vacant interstellar spaces, the vacant into the vacant. The captains, merchant bankers, eminent men of letters, the generous patrons of art, the statesmen and the rulers, distinguished civil servants, chairmen of many committees, industrial lords and petty contractors, all go into the dark. And dark the sun and moon, and the Almanac de Gotha, and the Stock Exchange Gazette, the Directory of Directors, and cold the sense, and lost the motive of action, and we all go with them into the silent funeral. Nobody's funeral, for there is no one to bury.
In the same way Eliot wanted to criticize modernity, seeing right through its facade of progress, only to find a chronic lack of agency and disconnection with the transcendental behind it. PJ, by leaving her amplified instruments behind, even if for just a 34-minute album, her shortest to date, might have been trying to fulfill a longing for something lost in the translation of times. The ability to imagine the unimaginable, to dream of the undreamable, to think of the unthinkable. I always thought the claim that writing poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric to be barbaric in itself. Violence has been at the core of the human experience since time immemorial. Genocide, patricide, infanticide, you name it. Yet poetry has been by its side ever since the birth of language. But the race of Nero and Shakespeare, of Leopold II, and the aforementioned T.S. Eliot, of Adolf Hitler and Toni Morrison. As the peoples of West Asia are fighting for their survival, there are still those that dare to take pen and paper to make meaning of the unspeakable. Just check out Gaza Poet Society after the end of this essay. If we give up on the few remaining abilities that separate us from literal beasts, what else there will be to fight for? In 2011's Let England Shake, even amidst some of PJ Harvey's most brilliant songs, there is one that I truly believe will stand out as one of the most enduring of the 21st century, On Battleship Hill. Inspired by the needless waste of World War I's Gallipoli campaign, resulting in the loss of around 250,000 lives, PJ dares to, in a voice even more beautiful and haunting than hers in White Chalk, place the scent of time squarely at the center of a landscape painting littered by 250,000 lost souls. A hateful feeling still lingers in those caves and trenches. It will for as long as we're still bathing in each other's blood and long after humanity's last breath is given. Maybe the last of our specimens' breath will be spent on that same stoic herb Polly Jean sung about in 2011. Maybe this person is or will become a fan of PJ's music, her falsetto echoing through his or her skull one last time before the soul leaves the body. But there'll still be time to be smelled for times and times afterward. Cruel nature has won and will win again. Even if, due to the leaking of a few PDF files, the entire world ends up engulfed in flames, even as I run to the nearest bomb shelter, I hope to hold near and dear everything that reminds me that one day, no matter how many mistakes have been made, there was such a thing called humanity. The race of John Coltrane and Tarkovsky, people who went beyond our cruel nature to elevate the collective spirit. It's unlikely we'll be here forever, but maybe there'll be a race from outer space who will take interest in studying the remaining artifacts of our civilization. And influenced by our finest pieces of art, they may reach the conclusion that we may have been cruel, but that we weren't worthless after all. This is the feeling that on Battleship Hill gives me, even if it's darker, maybe final days of a human experience.